Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm Julia, your co-host. Hi, everyone.
Today, we're going to talk about something that many English learners struggle with: speaking anxiety. It's that nervous feeling you get when you have to speak English, especially in front of others.
Oh, yes. I remember feeling so nervous when I first started speaking English in public. My heart would race, my hands would shake, and sometimes I just couldn't find the right words.
Exactly, Julia. Speaking anxiety is very common, but it can hold you back from practicing and improving your English. That's why today, we want to help you understand what speaking anxiety is, and most importantly, how to handle it.
Whether you're preparing for a presentation, trying to talk with native speakers, or even just practicing in class, this episode is for you.
So, if you've ever felt nervous or scared to speak English, stay tuned. We'll share tips, real-life examples, and simple exercises to help you feel more confident and relaxed.
Let's get started.
All right, Julia. Before we dive into how to handle speaking anxiety, let's first understand what it really is. Speaking anxiety, or sometimes called speech anxiety, is the feeling of nervousness or fear that many people experience when they have to speak, especially in a second language like English.
Yes, and it's more common than you might think. Even native speakers get nervous sometimes. But for English learners, it can feel extra challenging because you worry about making mistakes or not being understood.
Exactly. This fear can make you freeze up, forget words, or even avoid speaking altogether. But it's important to remember feeling anxious when speaking is normal, and it doesn't mean you're not good at English.
That's right. I remember once I had to introduce myself in a new class, and I was so scared my voice almost disappeared. I kept thinking, what if I say something wrong? But after a few tries, I realized it was just anxiety, not a sign that I couldn't speak English.
Great example. Anxiety is your body's natural response to stress. It's like an alarm that says, "Be careful." But sometimes, the alarm rings even when there's no real danger. That's what happens when you feel anxious about speaking English.
And the funny thing is, the more you try to avoid speaking because of anxiety, the more it can grow. So understanding it is the first step to managing it.
Absolutely. So to sum up, speaking anxiety is a feeling of nervousness or fear about speaking English. And it's very normal. Knowing this can help you realize you're not alone, and there are ways to work through it. Now that we know what speaking anxiety is, Julia, let's talk about how it actually affects English learners like our listeners.
Sure, Jason. For many learners, anxiety can stop them from speaking as much as they want to. Sometimes they might avoid conversations or miss chances to practice, which slows down their progress.
That's a big problem because speaking regularly is key to improving English. If anxiety makes you stay silent, it can make learning harder and longer.
Exactly, and anxiety doesn't just affect how often you speak. It can also cause physical symptoms. Have you noticed things like your voice shaking, your heart racing, or your mind going blank when you feel nervous?
Oh, definitely. I've seen learners freeze in the middle of a sentence because their brain can't find the words. It's frustrating, but it's a common effect of anxiety.
Another thing is that anxiety can make you second-guess yourself a lot. You might worry about your accent, grammar mistakes, or if people understand you even when you're doing just fine.
That's true. These worries can make your confidence drop, which creates a cycle. The more anxious you feel, the less confident you become, and the harder it is to speak.
And this isn't just mental anxiety, can affect your body too. You might sweat, blush, or feel tense, which can make speaking even more difficult.
Right, Julia. So speaking anxiety can affect not only how often and how well you speak, but also how you feel physically and emotionally.
But don't worry. The good news is there are ways to manage these effects, and we'll talk about those soon.
All right, Julia. Now comes the most important part, how to handle speaking anxiety. Let's share some practical tips that our listeners can start using right away.
Great. The first tip I always tell learners is preparation. When you prepare what you want to say in advance, you feel more confident. For example, if you have to give a short speech or introduce yourself, practice it several times at home.
Exactly. Even writing down key words or phrases helps. Preparation reduces the fear of the unknown, which is a big cause of anxiety.
And don't forget practice. The more you practice speaking English with friends, teachers, or even by yourself, the easier it becomes.
That's a great point. Another tip is to use deep breathing and mindfulness. When you feel nervous, take slow, deep breaths to calm your body and mind. It sounds simple, but it really works.
Yes, I like to think of it as pressing the reset button when anxiety starts. You can even close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply.
Next, we have positive self-talk. Instead of telling yourself, "I can't do this," try saying, "I am improving every day," or "It's okay to make mistakes."
Mistakes are normal. Positive thinking helps reduce negative feelings that feed anxiety. Remind yourself that everyone learns at their own pace.
Also, start small. If speaking to a big group feels scary, begin by talking to just one or two people you trust. Low-pressure conversations can build your confidence.
I love that tip. And don't forget it's okay to pause and slow down while speaking. When you slow your speech, it gives you time to think and reduces pressure.
Right. Many learners feel rushed, but slowing down helps your listener understand you better, too.
Another technique is visualization. Imagine yourself speaking English confidently and successfully before the actual conversation. Visualizing success can prepare your mind for a positive experience.
That's a powerful tool. I also want to mention mental rehearsal practice in your mind what you want to say, including how you'll handle difficult moments.
And don't forget the importance of accepting imperfection. No one speaks perfectly, not even native speakers. The goal is communication, not perfection.
Absolutely. Lastly, be patient and kind to yourself. Overcoming speaking anxiety takes time, but every small step forward counts.
To sum up, prepare well, breathe deeply, think positively, start small, slow down, visualize success, and be patient with yourself.
Those are some great tips, Julia. Listeners, try to practice these techniques regularly and see what works best for you. All right, Julia, let's show our listeners a simple conversation where someone feels nervous but uses some of the tips we talked about.
Sounds good. I'll be a learner named Anna who feels anxious about speaking English. You can be Mark, someone who's friendly and encouraging.
Hi, Anna. How are you today?
Hi, Mark. I'm good. Thank you.
You sound a little nervous. Is everything okay?
Yes, I'm just a little scared to speak English sometimes. I get worried I will make mistakes.
That's totally normal, Anna. I used to feel that way too. What helps me is taking a deep breath before I start talking. Want to try it together now?
Okay. Deep breath. That helps a bit.
Great. Also, remember it's okay to take pauses. You don't have to speak quickly. Try saying your thoughts slowly.
I will try. Sometimes I also practice what I want to say before talking.
That's a smart idea. And if you forget a word, just take a moment. You can also say, "Let me think for a second," or try explaining the idea in a different way.
Thank you, Mark. I feel a little better now.
You're doing great, Anna. Just keep practicing and remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's part of learning.
Thank you. I will try to speak more and not be afraid.
See? Listeners, using deep breathing, pausing, and positive self-talk really can help when you're feeling anxious.
Role plays like this are a great way to practice in a safe environment before speaking in real life.
Julia, after talking about the challenges and tips, I think it's really important to remind our listeners to stay motivated. Speaking anxiety can feel tough, but with time, it does get better.
Absolutely, Jason. One thing I always tell learners is don't give up just because it's hard at first. Confidence doesn't come overnight. It builds little by little with practice.
That's so true. I remember one of my students who was very shy about speaking English. At first, she could barely say a sentence, but after practicing a few minutes every day, she started speaking more naturally and confidently.
Stories like that are inspiring. It's also helpful to celebrate small wins. Did you speak English today, even if just a little? That's progress. Every step counts.
Yes, and remember, even native speakers get nervous sometimes, so you're definitely not alone. Anxiety is just part of the journey, not the end.
And if you ever feel discouraged, take a break. Breathe, and remind yourself why you want to learn English. Your goal, whether it's for work, travel, or making friends, is worth it.
Exactly. Stay patient and kind to yourself. Keep practicing, and your confidence will grow naturally.
We believe in you, and we know you can do it.
That's right. Keep pushing forward, and soon speaking English will feel easier and more natural. Julia, before we finish today's episode, let's answer some common questions our listeners have about speaking anxiety.
Great idea, Jason. The first question I often hear is, how can I stop my voice from shaking when I speak English?
Good question. One way is to practice deep breathing before you start speaking. Also, try to slow down your speech. It helps relax your body and voice.
Another question is, what if I forget the words in the middle of a conversation?
That happens to everyone. A good trick is to pause, take a deep breath, and try to explain your idea in simpler words or use gestures. Don't be afraid to say, "Can I think for a moment?"
Here's a common worry. Will people judge me if I make mistakes?
Remember, most people are understanding and appreciate your effort to speak another language. Making mistakes is part of learning. It shows you're trying and growing.
And finally, some ask, how long does it take to stop feeling anxious when speaking English?
That depends on the person, but with regular practice and using the tips we shared today, you will see improvement over weeks and months. The key is to keep going.
Thanks for those great questions, Jason. I hope our listeners feel more confident now.
Well, Julia, that brings us to the end of today's episode on how to handle speaking anxiety in English.
Yes, Jason. We hope our tips and examples have helped you understand that speaking anxiety is normal and something you can overcome.
Remember, the key is to be patient with yourself, practice regularly, and use the strategies we talked about like preparation, deep breathing, and positive thinking.
And don't forget, making mistakes is part of learning. Every time you speak, you're improving, even if it doesn't feel perfect.
We encourage you to keep speaking English as much as you can, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Confidence comes with time and experience.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends.
And if you have questions or topics you want us to cover, leave a comment below. We love hearing from you.
See you next time on the English Learning Podcast. Keep practicing and stay confident.
Bye, everyone.